a number of members of the agency who will really just be introducing themselves, I think, and the work they do at a very high level so that we begin to get a sense, those of us who haven't worked with them before, of the different roles that they play and all of the things that the agency does. And say that it's extensive, and we'll just get a flavor of it today. We also have a couple of folks who are joining us online. We'll, I think, maybe start with introducing ourselves, and then Secretary Evans can introduce the people in the room. And then we'll let him speak a little bit about the role of the agency at a high level. So I'm David Durfee, chairing the committee again this year. Very happy to be doing so. I represent the Bennington 3 district, which is Shaftesbury and Sunderland and Bostonbury. And why don't we just go around this way?
Great. Hi, all. Heather Supernat, Vice Chair. I represent Windsor 4, the towns of Farnham, Pomfret, Bridgewater, and West Hartford.
Hi, John O'Ryan, Windsor Orange 1. That's Royalton, my hometown of Tunbridge, and fourth term in on it.
Craig Burt from Cabot, Danville, and Peacham. This is my first term here.
Michelle Boslin. I'm from Wyndham 3, which is Westminster, Rockingham, and Brookline.
Richard Nelson from Derby, first term.
Jed Lipsky, Lamoille 1, Stowe, second biennium on this committee.
I'm Leland Morgan. I represent Grand Isle County in West Milton. This is my fourth term. This is my first term in agriculture, and I'm looking forward to it.
So we're a smaller committee, as you can see this year, but the historically the committee had this many members, so we're a little more spread out. It's great. Anyway, welcome.
Welcome. It's great. And I'm glad to see you have your calendar up there. Our kids from around the state produced a wonderful calendar, and it's online if you haven't got a copy, but some creative kids, fourth graders around the state. We had about 300 entries. So it's great to be here in 2025. Anson Tebbett, Secretary of Agriculture, Food and Markets. We've got a full stable of division heads over here on the sidelines, and we're going to be hearing from them in just a moment. They're just going to give some high level information for you about what they're all doing, and maybe some hot topics and maybe some projects that they all did over the summer. So I just wanted, I always like to begin with our mission and what we do at the Agency of Agriculture. And I'm going to read that to you. It is to facilitate, support, and encourage the growth and viability of agriculture while protecting the working landscape, human health, animal health, plant health, consumers, and the environment. So that's our everyday life, and you touch upon it every single day as you make your way to the State House and as you go home at night. We're part of your lives and everything that goes on. So that's our mission. First of all, congratulations on your election, and congratulations on your appointment to this committee. It's a wonderful committee, and we work well together over the years and always have. In a moment, we're going to hear from some of our division directors about what they all do. But I wanted to, first of all, talk to you about maybe a emerging issue it's with us that happened over the summer. As you all know, we had another flood. I think you're all aware of that. We had another flood, and severe weather was with us again this summer. Too much rain, creating some challenges for our farmers and producers and those who work in the woods as well. It's been a rough couple of years for our folks, our loggers, and those that make products from wood. So there's a little history. We've experienced not one, but three separate federal disaster declarations, and yet another one in 2024. So we had two in 23 and one in 24. And we've been working on the financial impact of that. So we've had data collection, we've had public surveys, we've had applications submitted to the Business Emergency Gap Assistance Program, which we call BGAP in state government. And it shows the losses for 2023 growing upwards of $69 million across agriculture and forestry and the food system, and another 2.8 million in damages in the forestry economy alone. So 2.8 alone just in the forestry economy, and overall in agriculture at 69 million. So that's 2023. We also had damage and loss reported by farmers to BGAP tipped the scale of 44.6 million for 2023 and 13.5 million for 2024. For the product sector, surveys show a conservative estimate of 2.8 million for 23 damage and loss experienced in 5 million for 2024. Vermont's limited financial resources paired with the continually occurring natural disaster and some of our aging infrastructure related to it have made it increasingly difficult to keep up with the needs of agriculture and those in the forest product sectors. But fortunately, the governor and the Agency of Commerce and also the legislature did make some funds recover. We've issued grants in both years covering some of the losses. And Nicole Dubuque is with us, head of our operations. She'll go into more detail about what has been done on the state side. But we do have some good news that came to us in late December. Thanks to the hard work of our congressional delegation, Vermont will receive federal funds in the coming weeks that will be distributed to farmers and those who are working in the woods. Particularly thanks to Senator Peter Welch with his colleagues working on the Senate Ag Committee. They were able to secure $220 million, and this will come as a block grant to Vermont. This is somewhat unique. So a block grant will come to Vermont, and those states that are eligible for this $220 million are all the New England states, plus Hawaii and Alaska. So all the New England states, Hawaii and Alaska. Now, we don't know the total amount Vermont will give, and this is where the process is underway. So we're going to put our sort of our requests in our surveys and our BGAP data. Luckily, we had that because it's a quick turnaround. So we have that data. We will submit that to the United States Department of Agriculture. They'll come back to us and say, this is your dollar figure. State of Vermont, likely the Agency of Agriculture, distribute these grants to our farmers, producers, and those that are working in the woods. So I come to you with that kind of some good news, and this is for 23 and 24. So all those farmers and producers that were in that issue. And we're also, because it is a block grant, we're hoping for a little more flexibility and eligibility as well. So there's that part of it. There's also going to be, through another pocket, crop losses that they can get through FSA and USDA as well. So there'll be another pocket of money that's going to be for the entire nation through that. Obviously a bigger pot of money, but farmers in Vermont will also be eligible for some of that. So in the coming weeks, as soon as we get our allotment of money, we don't know what it will be, then we'll set up a program and start distributing dollars to our much needed farm community and those in the forestry community as well, because of the severe weather that they experienced in 23 and 24. And this includes some of those. I think it all began with the hard frost that began in May of 23. So it's that all that will be eligible as we move forward. So if you have any questions on that, I can stop. And then Nicole was also going to do a little deeper dive in on the state programs that we've had out in 23 and 24. But if you have any questions about this federal program, I can answer those now.
Representative Nelson.
On your figures for the losses of 23 and 24, I'm sure not all farmers applied for BGAP or whatnot. Do you expect those losses may have been quite a bit higher?
Yeah, I suspect we didn't capture everybody in that. And of course, on the state program, we only covered about 30% of those losses through the application. I think I got that right, Abby? It's only 30% of those that were covered. But I think, we're trying to figure out, and we've had some conversations about, what application. It was certainly, I think it's probably going to be different than the BGAP application. So I think we're probably going to capture some folks that may have not been involved in that. And we also are, having conversations with SDA. Could we do some things that will help long-term strategies for mitigation? For example, we've heard from some produce folks that would like to move maybe some of their hoop houses out of the floodplain. Would an eligible grant be available to help finance or make an investment of that? And that would be a good long-term strategy. And we have heard from some of those producers that would like to do that. So we hope through some flexibility, because it is a block grant, that we will be able to do some of that, as opposed to maybe just getting a strict cash payment based on based on losses. But I think our big next step will be determined, whether it's going to be X millions of dollars that we're going to receive. So other states have had losses as well, Maine, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and I'm sure with, Hawaii with the fires they had, I don't know the impact it had on their forestry and some of their ag producers in Hawaii, the big fires that they had about a year ago. So.
Representative Boswell.
Yeah, I have a question. So in terms of the funds that would be coming in that would benefit, I have some farmers in my district who had really huge losses due to the hard frost that came, I think it was May 16th or something in 23. So if they already have applied in the past and got a small amount of funds that came in, does that mean they'll be recontacted then? Or how do we let farmers know in our district that these funds will be available when they are available?
As soon as we, get our dollar figure and get what's eligible, we will do a significant outreach to all our groups and, through the legislative body as well, but also through the, veggie and fruit associations, all our social media challenges, likely a press release, and probably some sort of, major announcement that this is here and this is what's eligible for.
And how soon did you expect that's going to come in?
I don't know. We have a deadline, I believe next week that we need to submit, all the states need to submit what their totals are, their losses. And then it's kind of up to USDA to get back to us with that. And then they set up, essentially, they'll set up a program a granting agreement to the state of Vermont. And then it's our duty to get it out as quickly as possible. So I think, we'll continue to work on, what the application might look like from the state of Vermont and how that needs to roll out. So we can do that now. And then we'll just plug in the dollar figure and some of the eligibility criteria that would be with it.
Thank you.
Let's take one more question and then we'll introduce the rest of the team here.
Thank you, Secretary. There's a new administration about to be sworn in down in Washington. Are these funds impacted at all by the change in policy in the new administration, or are they the check in the mail?
We asked that question too. And this is my understanding from USDA. These are committed funds and there's little or no chance that they could be swept but to be used for something else because they were part of the, that big budget reconciliation bill that came at the end of it. And part of it was the big disasters across the United States were part of that. So my understanding is it's ready and it's very difficult. And they pretty much said they can't touch these without. So that was, we asked that question.
Well, it's good news.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if you hear, our goal is to get them out as soon as we can. And we'll be communicating that. And if you hear of anyone that, for whatever reason was not eligible or did not get any funding through some programs that were rolled out, maybe this is one that will make a fit or continue to help people recover. But Nicole is here. She can talk about the state program, the BGAP program, and how it impacted us. If you'd like to have Nicole come up. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the record, Nicole Dubuque, I am the Chief Operating Officer for the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Market. So I think that was a good segue, and I'll start with BGAP and then maybe branch off into the directors of the different divisions. So I am also the chair of the Agriculture Recovery Task Force. We've been working since August of 2023 on just making sure that we have collaboration between the federal government, state government, congressional delegation, and all of our agriculture partners around the state to make sure that we are aligned and that we are, surveying farmers in a collaborative way so that people aren't being asked by multiple different organizations about their losses. That's worked really well. One of the things that we're doing right now is we continue to do drop-in sessions at least once a week to just check in on each other and see where we're at. As far as recovery programs. So one of the big recovery programs that was state funded that we were able to do in 23 and then again in 24 is the Business Emergency Gap Assistance Program, which is BGAP. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update on the 2024 numbers so you know where we sit. We received about 100 applications the need, the total damages reported were about 13.5 million. I want to make a note here, though, that we were looking for physical damages. So some people did report economic injury in their applications, and we took that into account. That wasn't eligible for funding, however. So just so you all know, that this number is probably fairly low compared to the actual losses people suffered and interruptions to business. So like I said, 100 applications, about 13.5 million. The estimated award of what is being paid out, I think most of which has been paid at this point, was 2.7 million. Because again, it only covered 30% of physical losses that were reported on the application. But a lot of folks have reported that it was really helpful. So that's where BGAP is right now. Luckily, I'm trying to think of some other good things to point out to you. One is that it looks like we had about 5 applications denied, which in the grand scheme of things is a very low number. So any questions on BGAP before I?
Yeah, more so to the, maybe to the disasters.
Mhm.
I assume we're talking about 23, the disaster that was July 10th, 11th.
Mhm.
Is this also covering the disaster at the end of July that affected like the Lindenville area so severely, Kirby and down through Sage Harbor and whatnot?
Yes, the 2023 BGAP specifically was extended to essentially anyone that experienced damages from the flood and also continuous rain. And like Secretary Tebbets talked about, we had multiple disaster declarations as well from 2023. We had May for the frost, July for the another flood in December.
That we did.
Yeah.
And then in 24, we had 2.
Yes.
The second one more localized, but quite severe.
Yes. And I believe, I'm looking to Abby to, if you remember, I believe the localized St. Johnsbury area was also covered.
Then Morgan. Holland. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? Nicole, just to clarify, and maybe we can ask Secretary Tibbetts, because it's a federal question, actually. Just thinking back to the question Representative Bosland asked about the freeze event in May of 2023. Is that explicitly covered, or damages that might have been incurred in that event for the federal money?
For the federal money, my understanding from speaking to the representatives of the congressional delegation is that yes, that will be covered because it happened within 2023, the year 2023. Yes. And also I should add, to ease your mind, within the continuing resolution, it does explicitly state that the funding is until it's expended. So I think that's another thing where they wouldn't be able to take it back or set a deadline on it.
Representative O'Brien.
Just to follow up, there was also another rate. Was it in August? There was a flood in Addison County around Middlebury too, that in that same year, 2023, is that right? So to be eligible, is it just within that 2023 window, or is it, does your county have to be declared like a disaster area?
For the federal dollars, we don't have all the parameters yet, but my understanding is that if you experienced some sort of disaster that damaged your business or you had losses, and it's specifically for agriculture and forestry, that it should be covered. Yeah.
Right. Any other questions about the BGAP program or state?
I'm going to shift gears and change hats a minute. I brought a handout just for folks that are new. That's the kind of org chart for our agency. So I think I'll just run through broad brush each division, and then we'll have each division head talk a little bit about what they do. So you met Secretary Tebbets, who's the head of our agency. Deputy Secretary Eastman is on Zoom, I believe. And then we have our General Counsel, Steve Collier. We have 6 divisions within our agency. I'm going to go in order of the handout here. So we have Food Safety and Consumer Protection, which is led by E.B. Flory. Within this division, we have animal health, dairy, maple, meat inspection, produce, weights and measures. We also have country of origin labeling. There's a lot going on in that division that we'll talk about more when we come in for our full budget presentation. We also have the Ag Water Quality Division led by Laura DePietro. Within that division, we have farm water quality inspections and enforcement, education and outreach, technical and financial assistance programs. We have the water quality granting programs. Administration division, which is me. Within that division, we have the business office, which also includes licensing and registration. We have our communications folks, and then we have energy and land use, so like Act 250, Section 248. Then we have VALE, Vermont Agriculture and Environmental Laboratory, led by Cheryl Achilles. That is our lab down in Randolph, and we are co-located there with the Agency of Natural Resources. Agricultural Development Division, led by Abby Willard. And within that division, we have Eastern States Exposition, Big E, Farm to Institution, Working Lands Enterprise Initiative, Northeast Dairy Business Innovation Center, and a lot more than that, but those are kind of the highlights here. And then Public Health and Ag Resource Management Division, which we affectionately call FARM with a PH. Steve Dwinell leads that division. He is up on Zoom. And within there, we have animal feed, apiary, pollinators, pesticides, plant health, and vector surveillance. So I don't know if you have any questions about the structure. Otherwise, I'll probably just hand it over so that they can talk a little bit more in depth about their work.
Why don't we bring up anyone who wants to come up to the table and hear a little more about each.
Let's go
division.
the end over, right? Abby, do you want to start?
Let's suggest where you read that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Good afternoon. For the record, I'm Abby Willard. I'm the director of the Ag Development Division. So it's nice to see new faces and many of you back. So the Ag Development Division, as Nicole described, is one of the 6 divisions within the agency. We are a relatively small, but I would say mighty team. There's 23 staff within the Ag Development Division. We're a non-regulatory division. About 1/3 of our staff are supported with general funds, and about 2/3 of our staff are supported with special funds or federal resources. And that sort of expresses the growth and development that's happened within the Ag Development Division over the past 5 years. We've grown significantly. I think we've added like 15 staff in the last 5 years through various federal funds and other one-time appropriations. There's 5 sections within our division. So a market development section, a marketing section, 2 specific program sections for the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative, which has been in existence since 2012, and then the Northeast Dairy Business Innovation Center, though it serves the 11-state region, is based out of our agency and is an economic development program, so is in the Ag Development Division. And then we have a grants and contracts team. Since we put out hundreds of grants and contracts every year and millions of dollars, it's a critical part of our kind of economic development programming. So the Ag Development Division, so what do? We provide business support in a variety of ways. We do a lot of grant making. We do a fair bit of marketing and market development support for ag businesses and Vermont products in the ag and food space. We build a lot of partnerships. So that's a lot of the work that we do, is building relationships within the food system, within Vermont, within the Northeast region. We have national and international relationships as well. We focus a lot on communication and messaging and community engagement, sort of figuring out how we both reach the ag and food system population, and then how do we share information with them. But mostly we do grant making, since it is an economic development program. One of our most effective ways of sort of supporting businesses and opening market channels and increasing the amount of local product that's both produced in Vermont and then makes it successfully to the marketplace is through our grant making programs. So in fiscal year 24, which is like the most recent data set that we have that's complete, because we're just in the process of fiscal year 25 right now, we had 22 different, we call them funding opportunities. So different grant opportunities for businesses and service providers and partners to apply for. And we granted out $11.4 million to over 260 recipients. The most interesting thing was that we had the most unprecedented demand and need expressed by the ag and food system sector in fiscal year 24 that we've ever seen. And I think it's for a variety of reasons that we can talk about and certainly have a longer conversation with this committee when we come back and have more of a detailed discussion. But we had over $108 million in requests just in fiscal year 24 alone. And that was from over 1,290 businesses. So we funded 200 and some odd, which meant that we left 1,000 unfunded projects and proposals from businesses in the state unsupported in fiscal year 24. And our funding allocation in our fiscal year 25 current year is quite a bit less than it was in fiscal year 24. So it's sort of a dire kind of economic development sort of like picture in many ways out there within the food system in Vermont, unfortunately. But despite kind of that unprecedented demand, it's interesting to think about like how we are connecting with the various businesses. So we can connect, and we've had the opportunity through particular funding opportunities to make investments at the specific sector level. So we have grant programs that go directly to dairy producers. We had the ag development grants that were focused on meat, maple, and produce specifically. We have federal funds that look just at specialty crop producers. So that's one way that we're able to make investments. We can also make investments in businesses based upon the market channel that they invest in. So if they do direct to consumer marketing, so they sell directly to the consumer, we have a variety of granting programs and opportunities that targets that mechanism for reaching the consumer. We have the farm to school and farm to institution programming that's all about sort of institutional markets. And we had the really exciting and successful accomplishment this last year of being able to reinstitute fluid milk served in all 6 correctional facilities. So that was funding that came from the Vermont Dairy Promotion Council that was complemented by our farm to school funds. We can also make investments to producers of different sizes and different scales and stages of development. So actually, again, this committee in last biennium was very successful in investing in a small farm diversification and transition program, which was targeting grants to small farms. We also make investments in larger farms through like trade show assistance grants to help them access markets outside of Vermont and actually even international markets through the food export program. So again, kind of targeting different needs for different businesses based upon the size and stage of development that they're in. We can also make investments along what we call the supply chain. So like we can support businesses at the production level, then we can make investments as they're looking at challenges around distribution or storage or aggregation of product, or even doing some value-added processing, and then all the way to the access of the markets. The division engages in like policy solution making. So looking at maybe it's not grant funds that the industry or the sector needs, but maybe it's looking at the accessory on-farm business opportunities, or more clearly defining the local definition of how you can claim made in Vermont, or thinking about land access. The last piece I thought I would share was just the amount of partnership and relationship building that we participate in. So we have staff, and the agency is engaged in both local and regional partnerships. So whether that's the engagement in environmental justice issues, or thinking about health and all policy, looking at the farm to plate network accomplishments, thinking about the farm to school network, to then our regional relationships, thinking about New England, Feeding New England, which has an objective for the Northeast region to provide 30% of all consumer food produced within the region by 2030. As well as there's new funding that's been invested in regional food business centers, a little bit mimicking the dairy business innovation centers, which are oriented across the country, across 4 different regional centers, doing something similar for regional food system businesses. And so we have staff that sit on those coordinating committees. So we'd love to come back and share in greater detail about our Working Lands program, or the federal funds that we receive, or the Dairy Business Innovation Center investments. There's some really exciting, kind of very specific accomplishments and impacts that we can talk about those programs. And then I think when Secretary Tebbets was talking about, and Nicole talking about like what's happening in 2025, there is this disaster block grant assistance funding coming from Congress, but there's also another like $5.5 million that has recently been appropriated and coming to Vermont through the Agency of Agriculture. One is around organic dairy in institutions. Another is called the Local Food Purchase Assistance Program, which is looking at more marginalized populations and how those individuals can access local food. Local food in schools and childcare, again, another federal appropriation of trying to get more local food into childcare centers as well as into our K through 12 school system. So those are some bright spots that there's a variety of new federal funds coming into Vermont, in addition to kind of we're working through our, traditional and established high impact programs that are state level programs. So looking at my panel of colleagues, that was all I was going to plan to share with you, and to make sure you have time to hear from everyone, unless there's questions.
Just a quick question. Can you just speak a little bit about your strategic plan? Because you were sort of co-author of that with your division, was it?
Yes, I think,
You're halfway through.
yeah, you're referring to the
21.
ag and food system strategic
Exactly,
plan. Yeah, so part of the role that the Agency of Agriculture plays is sort of like in partnership with so many organizations, including the Farm to Plate Network and Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund. And so every 10 years, we're on like a 10-year rotation of developing a strategic plan for the future of agriculture and our food system in the state. And so, yeah, that plan was redone in 2021 through 2030 is the current 10-year strategic plan. And there's a variety of high priority strategies and recommendations to be able to see a more viable future for agriculture in Vermont. That effort has then been built upon by the Future of Ag Commission that was created for 3 years by the governor through executive order. And that effort sort of took a lot of those recommendations and kind of like drilled down to get even more specific about like what are the high impact, high leverage points to be able to improve the kind of quality of life for agricultural producers, be able to grow the reputation and quality of the product that we produce, and sort of ensure that our agricultural kind of industry is viable and that our landscape is preserved for food production. So yeah, we could talk through that plan. I think we have some strategy of wanting to kind of do some level setting even as soon as next week, I think, in this committee, talking through kind of what some of the data shows and what some of the frameworks for understanding where we are within the food system and what opportunities exist for the next remainder of that 10-year period. Yeah, it's a big document, so I'm not. Happy to share.
You on our agenda, I think Friday morning, Abby, to come in with Alan and Jake to give us a very high level introduction to Farm to Plate.
Oh, that's right. Yes, it'll even be this week. Yeah.
It'll be even this week, yeah. But then there'll be more after that. You and Alan, it sounds like have been working on quite a lot.
Yeah, I think Sidonia's got us scheduled in for next week. Yeah, it's great.
All right, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You want to select your next?
My next, yeah, since that's when she's coming your way. Here comes Laura.
Hello, I'm Laura DePietro, and I'm the director of the Water Quality Division at the agency. We generally do 3 things to keep it simple instead of the long list. We help farms understand what they need to do to comply with regulations by providing them technical assistance. So we have engineers, and we work with the federal government and with state resources to help farms implement projects. We also then have a variety of other programs that can help farms with different types of practices. So we have financial programs, we have 9 of them, that can help farmers implement cover cropping or other agronomic practices. So again, everything is focused on water. And then the last thing we do is we're a regulatory role in making sure that farmers are complying with water quality regulations. To step back, I think everybody traditionally thinks of a farm as maybe a dairy or something to that effect, right? Or vegetable. We also regulate essentially backyard farms in many ways. And so our scope under what we call our set of rules, which is the required ag practice rule, is very broad. And so we end up working with municipalities, trying to navigate how to deal most often with nuisance situations, helping people understand what is our jurisdiction versus police power or other things like that. So that is a whole body of work that actually does consume quite a bit of resources. In addition to, yes, we do regulate everything from the largest dairy to a traditional vegetable operation. Our charge that we have to do is by statute is we have to visit the large farms, which for us in Vermont is predominantly dairy farms that have at least 700 mature cows or more. We have to inspect them every year. And then medium farms that, again, predominantly dairy, we definitely have some beef in there and some poultry. Those are 200 head or more for dairy. We inspect them every 3 years at minimum. And then we had to create a categorical set of farms. We called them certified small farms because there's thousands of farms in Vermont, right? But at some level, we don't inspect the smallest ones on a regular cycle. If anyone calls and complains to us, we absolutely go and inspect and see what's going on. But the routine, regular set of inspections for a category of farms, which we decided it was given to us that, draw the line somewhere. We drew the line at 50 cows and up. And, there's parallels for other animal types. Those farms we visit at least once every 7 years. So anybody basically who has 50 cows or more is getting regularly inspected. And what you'll see is that, and I'll give you this little handout to kind of, whoop, this one doesn't have it. Never mind. I'll show you next time we come because we'll do a little more of an in-depth analysis. We have an online dashboard that you can look at and you can, kind of toggle and pick and choose. But one of the things you'll notice in the recent years is that when you go to inspect someone and you find violations, you send them an enforcement action. That means you have to go follow up on that enforcement action, right? You don't just send it and hope they take care of everything and, never check on it. So we call those enforcement follow-ups. And so even those inspection cycles might be 1 year, 3 year, or 7 year, we're at those farms a lot more because once you visit a farm and find something, you're back again to check up on it, typically the next year. Unless it's a project that we know is a multi-year project, we might, have that timeline and understanding and agreement with the farm. So those are just timelines, but the reality is we're there a lot. As an agency, we've invested a significant amount of resources in building systems. One of the things, and I'm sure you've heard of the topic of water quality in agriculture in the news, we get a lot of records requests. And so we're constantly having to respond to those, which if you don't have a good system, that's an enormous workload to be able to respond and address that. I can give an example. There was one summer, we got a request from the law school for the word water. We literally had a conference room with banker boxes. Just in the entire summer, we had students in there looking through everything because anything with our name, the water quality division, had water on it. So those are the constant records requests certainly was a big motivator and also just organization. But we invested in a database to help us track all the information that we are able to gather from these farms in terms of when did we inspect, what did we see? It helps us generate a report. And so we've done all of this, which is how we can do this dashboard that I'll show you the next time we come. So that we have data, we have analysis, we can show that, essentially our role is to make sure farms are compliant, and farms are generally very compliant. One thing I will say about my experience with farmers, at least, is some of them, and Anson, I think of you, well, it's like no more birds than I could ever think of, right? I can tell you about the turkeys and the deer, and they know what is going on in the environment. They are very connected to their land. So they do care a lot about making sure that they're compliant with water quality regulations. And so you'll see that the farms are compliant, but no one's perfect, right? And so that's where our role is to make sure that people are doing what they need to do. But in essence, you'll see too, when you look at the whole reason we have to do a lot of this is for Lake Champlain, phosphorus, TMDL. And then of course there's Memphremagog, which is also phosphorus impaired. And then Connecticut River is nitrogen impaired. As you get this data and this information from all of these farms, because another source of where we get it is we built an extension of this database for partners, people like conservation districts or UVM extension. So they can go to a farm and they can verify because they've got the skills, and we've got a whole quality assurance plan to show us what farmers are doing on their own without the government money, because farmers are doing a lot on their own without government money. And so we were able to tally all this data up and figure out how much are farms contributing to reducing nutrient pollution. And on the record, since the day we started doing all of this, farms have been 80 to 90% of those reductions. And this year they're going to be 87% of those reductions. And when you look at the state Clean Water Fund, they're only 30% of the money is for agriculture, right? So when you talk about bang for buck, agriculture is absolutely where it's at, because a good portion of the challenges that exist for our water quality are because of the land base and the agronomic. And so farmers are doing it. I don't know if if any of you have been here for at least 20 years and think about the landscape changes that you've seen on farms, from moldboard plowing to now no-till and cover crop, there's a very different landscape out there. And so it's been really interesting and fascinating to work because farmers are doing exactly what you all have asked us to implement. So looking forward to sharing more of that and happy to answer any questions.
Representative Nelson.
How big of a challenge are you finding the changing climate or climate resiliency to achieving our goals for the clean water?
Yeah, well, my experience when I think about our climate, I think not only just about what we're dealing with, but I think about all the other states. And a lot of the regulations that generally come across start at the federal level and then trickle down to state level. Vermont already had it hard, right? We have winter, we have real challenges, and not all states have those same challenges. So that growing season window is already very limited. And then when you throw additional challenges like floods or whatnot, early snowfall is one that can often happen. It becomes really problematic for people to be able to manage their operation. So there was 2 years ago, a very early, there was the flood, then there was the rain, and then there was snow. And so for farmers to do their fall field work practices and manure application, as an example, it was very challenging to navigate. How do you get all that done within that space? So I think what you see is not only the havoc that comes from someone losing, soil and having impacts directly to their farm, but also just being able to operate, because there's only so many windows in the agricultural sector to be able to do the things that you need to do.
Thank you. Thank you. Carol.
Good afternoon. My name is Cheryl Achilles. I'm the lab director at the Vermont Ag and Environmental Lab. Our lab is sort of split in between two agencies, if you will. So we serve both agriculture and the Agency of Natural Resources, or Department of Environmental Conservation specifically. So our main goal is provide testing. So the DEC, just really brief, they monitor the lakes and ponds and tributaries and check for inorganic chemistry, things like phosphorus runoff, chloride, things like that. There's a lot more to it. I'm briefly going over everything. But we provide the data so that they can then monitor and track those ponds and tributaries. And they have a tracker online that you can see. We also provide cyanobacteria monitoring. You might have heard about blue-green algae. It's not the right term, but people use that for surface waters and ponds, and also for drinking water. So this summer, we improved our testing. We expanded to 4 algal bloom toxins for the surface waters folks, and for the drinking water, modified our current method so that they could see more of what's going on within the algal blooms. So we've improved that, continuing to improve that going forward. They've asked us to change our method even further. So we're doing a comparison right now over the winter. So VAIL consists of our analytical lab, but we also have the Agency of Agriculture, different divisions within our lab space itself. So we have food safety, consumer protection folks there. So that consists of weights and measures lab, a plant health and a pest management lab. We have an entomology lab downstairs and an animal health lab. We also have the public health ag resource management hosted by Steve Dwinell. I kind of went over their labs. Under DEC, we have a fish health lab, forest biology, and a watershed management lab. So those folks generally submit the water quality tests to our lab upstairs. So the analytical lab has about 15 staff, including myself. The total building itself has about 35 folks that come in and out. And in the summertime, they're really busy out in the field, you can imagine. So some of our impacts that we do are, like I mentioned, cyanobacteria. You'll see a monitoring chart, a weekly report published usually in the summer. by DEC. And we also work with the Vermont Department of Health sometimes to inform decisions on public health practices and things, or shutting down beaches, things like that. We also do pesticide monitoring tests, supply the test for that, and help with enforcement samples. We do potable and non-potable water quality testing, so E. coli, total coliforms, things like that. We do air quality testing, specifically air toxics. Tick pathogen surveillance, so the farm division goes out, collects the ticks. We do the testing on those ticks. We test for 4 pathogens in those ticks. So we're looking for, or I should say they're looking for new and upcoming viruses that aren't normally found in Vermont. And we're also tracking Lyme as well. And then we do milk and dairy products. So under EB's division, we check for drug residue, bacteria, and the quality for pasteurization. And we also have 2 lab folks that go out to inspect at the local level, any places that have to do sort of a test on site. We make sure that they're following the FDA grade A pasteurization rules, specifically Appendix N. We also do infectious disease for equine and livestock, feed and fertilizer testing. We do performance enhancing substances for horse bulls, and pet foods and pet treats, making sure, or we provide label guarantees for those because that's a requirement in Vermont. And then we also have helped local universities such as UVM and Norwich recently this summer. They have student projects, and sometimes we provide testing, sometimes it's free, on projects they're doing to help support inorganic chemistry testing that they're doing. Let's see, and I think that is the basic thing. So over the summer, we did some test improvements. I touched upon that with cyanobacteria. We also improved some safety things that we had with our instruments, specifically our total fiber analysis. We had to lift a jug of acid over our heads to get it up on a thing. And so we are in the process of purchasing a new instrument, so we no longer have to do that. So that's good. As of yesterday, we just became certified for method 533 in PFAS drinking water. And so we're going to be working with DEC, hopefully to get public water systems tested within Vermont. So we're the first public health lab in Vermont to be able to provide that testing here locally. And then we also are working on some analyses that Steve's group wants us to do for pesticide monitoring. So, and overall, for overarching, we have a laboratory information system. So some of these folks mentioned their dashboards and things. So we don't have a great dashboard, but we do have a laboratory information system that we have. So every sample that comes in gets a unique tracking number, and results are reported through that thing. So we're gonna upgrade that system in the next couple of months. So that's it. Any questions for me?
Yeah, Director, easy question. Where is this laboratory located?
Oh, thank you. I should have said that. I'm sorry. We're located in Randolph Center. So we're co-located with the university, Vermont State University. I wanted to say Vermont Tech. I know it that way, but it's Vermont State University at the Randolph campus. Just over there.
As a follow-up, our Public Works Director, we've been monitoring PFAS for a couple of years. And the EPA has changed the standard for what's acceptable as being. And he allowed that there were very few labs in the country, let alone regionally, that had the capacity to detect the very, the parts per
Trillion.
trillion.
Yeah, yep.
Is your new certification going to be one that
Yes, yep, it's the, one of the two EPA methods that the Agency of Natural Resources accepts for results in order to control that. So it's method 533 specifically.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
I'm sure we all have questions, but we're probably also all mindful of time, and I appreciate that on the committee's behalf. I've been taking notes, and I'm going to hold my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, yeah. I'm going to suggest, just because we are going to run out of time, and not everyone will have had a chance, I think, to fully say what you wanted to share today. EB, we met you the other day, so I'm going to just make sure that we give Steve a chance to say hello. If we run out of time, and I do want to stop right at 2, just because I'm committed to being somewhere else in the building, I'm not even sure where. We'll get you right on the agenda for either later this week or as soon as we can get you in. But
No worries.
thank you. Thank you for understanding. Anyway, Steve, welcome.
Well, thank you. For the record, Steve Dwinell, Director of the Public Health and Agricultural Resource Management Division for the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets. Thank you very much for the opportunity to meet with you this afternoon. I'll do real brief. We are one of the divisions. We're a small division, 19 folks. We're a regulatory division. We have about 9 broad program areas that we're responsible for. We register and regulate agricultural inputs. That's fertilizer, commercial feed, seed, pesticides. Regulate plant nurseries and ginseng harvesting. We register, inspect, and assist Vermont beekeepers. We certify and license pesticide applicators. We ensure compliance with pesticide rules. We issue and enforce a series of permits for certain pesticide applications, such as mosquito control, golf courses, and invasive plant right-of-way control. And then we conduct surveillance for mosquito and tick diseases. And then a couple of things that have been already referred to. We do the surveillance for pesticides in surface water and groundwater. So those are some of the programs already been referred to. In terms of things that we're going to be working on this year, and that may be of interest to you and may want to hear more about, is we are working on a pollinator habitat improvement program, working with UVM and with a couple of other partners on that. We're going to be working on implementing Act 182, which was passed last year. That's the prohibition on use of neonic-treated seeds. Well, one of the big projects we have is working on regulating online sales. So the agricultural inputs that we regulate, the fertilizer and the feed and the pesticides. We're, in these days of internet sales, there's a concern that maybe unregulated materials are being purchased and sent in the state. So we've got an effort to track those folks down and get them into compliance. A big one coming up that I think we need to pay a lot of attention to is, in terms of the mosquito surveillance program we have, is we're working with the Department of Health for surveillance of Eastern equine encephalitis. You're probably aware last year we had a sort of a record number of detections of that virus in mosquito pools, mostly up in the northwest part of the state. And we're going to be continuing to do that surveillance this coming year. Last year we had 2 human cases and 1 human death as a result of Eastern equine encephalitis. So that's a big concern for us. And the Department of Health this year, we're going to be working pretty actively to conduct surveillance for the presence of that disease in mosquitoes. And if necessary, if the Department of Health determines that we need to do it, we'll be conducting treatment for those mosquitoes probably this fall, late summer, fall. Another initiative we have that we're implementing as a result of some changes in legislation last year is we're going to be providing an opportunity for online testing for pesticide certification exams. Currently, all the exams have to be done in person, which is, time consuming and cumbersome. And so we have the authority now to offer an online testing option, and we're in the process of finalizing that, which will be a good thing. And then I guess one last thing, just to be aware, the EPA has implemented a new strategy for complying with the Endangered Species Act. And that's going to have some implications for how pesticides are used, certain pesticides are used. And so we're in the process of working with grower groups and pesticide registrants to determine how that will be implemented in Vermont. So real quick, that overview. I'm glad to spend any, amount of time you want going into more detail on any of those areas, coming back, and certainly always available to answer any questions, providing information you may want.
Steve, you look like you're either on the roof of the ag building or from the window there.
On the chimney.
In a drone, I'm hovering.
All right, thank you. And Steve Collier is also here. Steve, do you just want to just come up and at least state your name and?
I don't want to hold you. I'm always last at home, at work, in a foot race. What did you don't.
Well, if you just want to sit down and stand right up again, just because you will be here.
I'd just really like to say congratulations to you all. I mean, what you do to hold yourself out for public office is incredibly courageous and incredibly important. And serving your fellow Vermonters is one of the highest callings that there is. So we all appreciate that and thank you. Just please talk to us. One of the greatest advantages we've always had at the agency is our relationship with this committee and a similar relationship with the Senate Agriculture Committee. There aren't that many people in Vermont that are focused on farming or agriculture, despite how incredibly important it is. There are a tremendous amount of pressures on farmers and on farming, and there aren't that many people paying attention because you can walk into the grocery store and get the food. People don't understand what underlies that. So without our communication and collaboration, people will lose what makes Vermont so important. So please let us know whenever you all have an idea that even if we are reluctant about it, we try to make it work. We know that whenever we have an idea, even if you have qualms, you give it serious consideration. So that relationship is integral to what we do. We can't do anything without all of you effectively. So we look forward to building that relationship. Welcome the new members that we'll continue to collaborate with. So thank you.
Thank you. And Steve, you're welcome to come back too and spend more time just talking about your role. Well, I know we'll see you. Anyway,
sorry.
No need to apologize. And I also realized that Deputy Secretary Eastman has been with us, I think, and just because.
I don't know if she jumped. She's been listening, I know, and watching.
Okay, well, we'll apologize for overlooking her and we'll have. You can all come back anytime. And I also want to apologize. I'm going to ask the committee to hold me accountable when we do introductions. I'm going to start with Sidonia next time because our committee assistant plays an important role in the functioning of what we do, and you'll be hearing from her. You'll be reaching out to her or indirectly, and we're working through her. So thank you, Sidonia. And with that, I think we can